If someone had told me 5 years ago that a free $50 betting bonus would cost me my marriage, my house, my job, and almost every person who loved me, I would have laughed in their face. I wasn't some guy in a smoky casino at 3 a.m. with shaking hands and empty pockets. I was normal. That's the part that scares me the most now. I was a husband, a dad, a supervisor at work, the guy people asked for advice. And I destroyed my life one safe bet at a time. I'm 38 now, but this started when I was 33. At the time, I had what most people would call a decent life. Not rich, not poor, just normal. I worked as a night shift supervisor at a distribution warehouse outside Manchester. The hours were rough, but the money was okay. My wife, Laura, worked part-time at a dental office, mostly so she could still be around for our daughter, Emily, who was 6 then. We had a small house with a mortgage, 2 cars, a dog that hated everyone except Laura, and a fridge that was always somehow either too full or completely empty. Nothing special, but it was ours. I wasn't a reckless person. That's what makes this hard to explain without sounding like I'm making excuses. I paid bills on time. I didn't drink much. I didn't go out chasing women. I didn't buy expensive clothes or cars. I was the boring one in my friend group. Laura used to joke that I researched toaster reviews like I was buying a house. Money was always tight, but not scary tight. We had credit card debt, like most people, but it was manageable. We had a little savings account for emergencies. Laura called it the "don't touch unless the ceiling caves in" fund. I loved my family. I still do, even though I don't have the right to say that in the same way anymore. Back then, my biggest stress was feeling like I wasn't doing enough. I was tired all the time. I'd come home at 6:30 in the morning, kiss Emily before school, sleep until noon, wake up groggy, and try to act like a normal human being. Laura never made me feel small, but I felt small anyway. Bills kept coming. Prices kept going up. Emily needed new school shoes. The boiler broke. The car failed its MOT. Every month felt like we were climbing out of one hole just to fall into another. I remember thinking, there has to be a way to get ahead. That thought was the first crack. It started with football. A guy at work named Darren was always talking about his bets. Not in a desperate way, more like it was a hobby. He'd check scores on his phone during breaks and say things like, "tenner on both teams to score, easy money." I never paid much attention until one night when he won around £400 from a £20 bet. He wasn't screaming or anything. He just showed us the slip on his phone like it was normal. Everyone laughed, called him lucky, and went back to work. But I kept thinking about it. £400 was not life-changing money, obviously. But that week, £400 would have fixed my car without touching the emergency fund. It would have meant Laura didn't have to move money around and pretend she wasn't worried. Darren noticed me looking and said, "You never bet?" I told him no. He laughed. Smart man. That should have been the end of it. A few days later, I saw an ad on my phone. New customers get £50 in free bets. I don't even remember the company now because they all look the same to me. Bright colors, smiling people, big numbers. Bet responsibly written in tiny text at the bottom like a legal spell. I signed up during my break. I told myself it didn't count because it was free money. My first bet was stupid. £10 free bet on a Premier League match. I didn't even understand the odds properly. I just picked the team I thought would win. They won. I made £28. That was it. £28. Less than a family takeaway. But the feeling I got was ridiculous. It felt like I had found a little hidden door in the wall. Like everyone else was working hard and stressing, and I had discovered a way to make money by just being clever. I didn't tell Laura, not because I thought I was doing anything wrong. At least that's what I told myself. I didn't tell her because I knew she'd roll her eyes and say, "Please don't start with that." And I didn't want to hear it. The next week, I put in £20 of my own money. I lost it. I felt annoyed, but not worried. People lose 20 pounds all the time. A round at the pub costs more than that. So I put in another 20 pounds. I won 75 pounds. That win erased the loss in my head. That's how it starts. You don't remember the whole picture. You only remember the part that makes you feel smart. For the next few months, I only bet on weekends. Mostly football, sometimes boxing. A few accumulators because Darren said that's where the real money was. I'd sit on the sofa while Laura watched some crime show, pretending to scroll social media while actually watching live stats. Corners, yellow cards, shots on target. Things I never cared about before suddenly felt like they controlled my breathing. Laura asked once, "Are you betting?" I said, "Just a few quid. Nothing serious." She looked at me for a second longer than normal. "Just don't be stupid with it," she said. I laughed and said, "You know me." That was the worst part. She did know me. And I was already changing. The first big win came about 6 months later. I had put 30 pounds on a 5-leg football accumulator. I don't remember all the games, but I remember the last one. A late penalty in the 88th minute turned my 30 pounds into just over 2,100 pounds. I was in the warehouse break room when it happened. I didn't cheer. I couldn't. I just stared at my phone while my hands started sweating. Darren saw my face and said, "No way." I showed him. He slapped my shoulder and said, "You lucky bastard." That night, I drove home feeling like I had beaten life for once. I told Laura I got a small work bonus. That lie came out so easily it scared me for about 5 seconds. Then I watched her face soften with relief, and I buried the guilt under the thought that I had done something good. We paid off one credit card, bought Emily a bike, took Laura out for dinner. For a little while, gambling made me feel like a better husband. That's the trick. It doesn't feel like destruction at first. It feels like rescue. After that, 10 pounds and 20 pounds bets felt pointless. I started putting 100 pounds on games, then 200 pounds. If I lost, I told myself I was still up from the big win. If I won, I told myself I had a system. I started watching betting YouTubers. I joined Telegram groups. I paid for tips from a guy who posted photos of rented sports cars and called everyone brother. I knew it was probably nonsense, but I wanted to believe someone out there had cracked the code. Soon, it wasn't just football. It was tennis, basketball, horse racing, UFC, even esports once, even though I had no idea what I was watching. That was the first time I remember thinking, what am I doing? It was 2:10 in the morning. I was sitting in the bathroom with the shower running so Laura wouldn't hear me. I had 300 pounds riding on 2 teenagers playing a video game in another country. One of them lost. So did I. I stood there in my boxers, holding my phone, feeling sick. Then I deposited another 300 pounds to win it back. That became the pattern. Lose, panic, chase, win a little, feel better, lose more, lie. I stopped sleeping properly. At work, I made mistakes. I snapped at people. I checked my phone every few minutes. If a bet was live, I couldn't focus on anything else. My body was in the warehouse, but my mind was inside the app. Laura started noticing. "You're always distracted," she said one morning. "I'm tired." "You're always tired." I worked nights. She didn't argue. That almost made it worse. I opened a second credit card without telling her, then a third. At first I used them only when I was sure I could pay them back after the weekend. Then I used them because I had no money left. Then I used them because I needed to recover what I had already used. By the time Emily turned 8, I was around 18,000 pounds in debt that Laura didn't know about. I still remember her birthday party. Pink balloons, a cheap bouncy castle in the garden, kids screaming, parents standing around with paper plates. I was smiling in photos, but 10 minutes before we sang happy birthday, I had been in the upstairs bedroom betting 500 pounds on a horse race. The horse came second. I came downstairs with cake candles in my hand and felt like I wasn't even in my own life anymore. Then came the twist I still think about every day. Laura's mother died. It was sudden. A stroke. She was only 61. Laura was destroyed. Her mum had been her best friend. I tried to be there. I really did. But grief is quiet and slow, and gambling is loud and immediate. That's an ugly thing to admit, but it's true. After the funeral, Laura received a small inheritance. Not huge, but enough to matter. Around £32,000. She cried when the money came through. Not because she was happy, because it felt wrong. She told me she wanted to put most of it away for Emily and use some to finally fix the kitchen. Her mum had always hated our kitchen. She used to say the cupboards looked like they were one sneeze away from giving up. I hugged Laura and said, "That sounds perfect." Inside, something else happened. My brain saw the number. £32,000. I didn't think, that's Laura's grief money. I didn't think, that's Emily's future. I thought, that could clear everything if I just doubled it once. That is addiction. It doesn't announce itself like a villain. It speaks in your own voice and uses words like solution. I didn't steal it immediately. I wish I could say I never planned to, but the thought sat there. A week later, I lost £4,000 in one night. I had been betting on live tennis. I kept chasing, convinced the next match would turn it around. By 4 a.m., my credit card was maxed out and I was sweating through my shirt. I checked our joint account. Nothing. Then I remembered Laura had moved the inheritance into a savings account. I had access, because years earlier we had set everything up together. I stared at the screen for maybe 20 minutes. I told myself I'd borrow £5,000, win back the £4,000, put it straight back, and nobody would know. I transferred it. I lost it in less than 2 hours. The shame after that should have stopped me. Instead, it made me more desperate. Over the next 3 months, I took £21,000 from that account. Not all at once. Never all at once. That's how I kept lying to myself. £2,000 here, £3,000, £500 there. Always with a plan. Always with a bet that felt almost guaranteed. There is no guaranteed bet. There is only the lie before the fall. Laura found out because of a letter. Not even a dramatic bank call. Not a private investigator. Not some huge scene. Just a boring letter about a declined direct debit. She asked me at the kitchen table, "Why is there only $11,000 left in the savings?" I froze. I actually tried to lie. I said, "What?" She turned the laptop toward me. Her hands were shaking. "Where is the money?" I opened my mouth and nothing came out. She whispered, "Please don't tell me you gambled it." The way she said please broke something in me. But not enough. I admitted to some of it, maybe half. I said I had made mistakes, that I was stressed, that I was going to fix it. I cried. Real tears. I promised it was over. Laura didn't scream. She just sat there and looked at me like I had died and someone else was wearing my face. That night she slept in Emily's room. I self-excluded from 2 betting apps the next morning. Then I opened an account with another one 3 days later. The final collapse happened 9 months after Laura found out. By then, our marriage was something that looked normal from the street and rotten from the inside. Laura controlled the bank accounts. My wages went into her account. She gave me money for fuel and food. I agreed to it because I wanted to prove I was serious. But addiction doesn't need permission. It just needs a gap. I started using payday loans. Then I borrowed from coworkers. Then I sold things. My watch, my old guitar, some tools from the garage, a camera Laura had bought me years earlier for my birthday. I told her I had misplaced it. I had pawned it for £180 and lost the money before I got home. The lowest point should have been when I took 60 pounds from Emily's birthday cards. I remember standing in her room while she was at school, opening cards from aunties and grandparents, telling myself I'd replace it Friday. I did replace it. Then I took it again. That memory makes me feel physically ill. But even that wasn't the bottom. The bottom came on a Thursday in November. I was at work when my manager called me into the office. I thought it was about a mistake on the loading schedule. Instead, 2 people from HR were there. They had found irregularities with overtime approvals. I had been manually adjusting shifts for myself and 2 other employees. The others didn't know. I had added hours that weren't worked, then approved them. It was fraud. Not clever fraud, not complicated, just desperate and stupid. I had convinced myself I was only borrowing from future overtime because I always worked extra anyway. They suspended me on the spot. I drove home in silence. No radio, no phone, just the sound of the indicator clicking too loudly at every turn. Laura was in the kitchen when I walked in. She knew something was wrong before I spoke. "What happened?" she asked. I said, "I messed up." Her face changed. Not angry, tired. So tired. I told her everything. The payday loans, the coworkers, the pawned camera, the overtime fraud, the fact that I might lose my job, and maybe worse. She listened without moving. When I finished, she said, "Did you take money from Emily?" I didn't answer quickly enough. She closed her eyes. That was the moment. Not when I lost the money. Not when HR suspended me. Not when I signed the loans. That exact second. My wife closed her eyes because looking at me hurt too much. I started crying and saying I was sorry. I said I was sick. I said I needed help. I said all the things that were true, but too late to protect her. She stood up and said, "Pack a bag." I said, "Laura, please." She said, "No, not tonight. I can't have you in this house tonight." Emily came downstairs because she heard us. She was 8 years old, holding a stuffed rabbit by one ear. She asked, "Is Dad leaving?" No one answered. I wanted to kneel down and hug her, but Laura stepped slightly in front of her. Not aggressively, just instinctively, protecting her child from me. I slept in my car that night in a supermarket car park. It was freezing. I had a coat over my legs and my phone battery was at 12%. I kept opening betting apps even though I had no money. Just opening them. Looking at odds. Looking at matches. Like a starving person staring through a restaurant window. Around 3 a.m., I searched how to stop gambling. Then I searched, what happens if you commit payroll fraud UK? Then I searched cheap rooms near me. Then I cried so hard I thought I was going to throw up. There was no dramatic rain, no movie moment, just a grown man in a dirty car, smelling like warehouse dust and panic, finally understanding that he had traded real people for numbers on a screen. The next morning, Laura texted me, "You need to call someone today, not tomorrow, today. I'm telling Emily you're staying somewhere else because you're unwell. Don't make me a liar." That message saved my life. Not because it fixed anything, because it gave me one instruction I could follow. I called a gambling helpline from the car park. My voice barely worked. I remember saying, "I think I ruined my life." The woman on the phone didn't sound shocked. That helped more than I expected. She asked if I was safe. She asked if I had somewhere to go. She told me about blocking software, self-exclusion, debt advice, and local support meetings. I wanted her to say one sentence that would make everything okay. She didn't. She just helped me take the next step. That was 2 years ago. I wish I could tell you everything turned around after that, but it didn't. Real life is messier. I lost my job. The company didn't press charges in the end because I agreed to repay the money. But I was dismissed for gross misconduct. I worked temporary jobs for months. I moved into a tiny rented room above a shop. The walls smelled like old cigarettes, no matter how much I cleaned. Laura and I separated legally last year. We are not back together. I don't blame her. I see Emily every other weekend now. At first, she barely spoke to me. She would answer questions with one word and ask to call her mom after an hour. The first time she laughed with me again, I went to the bathroom and cried quietly because I didn't think I deserved to hear it. I'm still paying debts. I probably will be for years. Laura sold the house, not because she wanted to, but because my choices made it impossible to keep. She moved closer to her sister. Emily changed schools. That is the part people don't understand about gambling addiction. You don't just lose your own money. You move other people's lives without their permission. I attend support meetings twice a week. I have blocking software on my phone and laptop. My bank blocks gambling transactions. My wages go into an account my brother helps me manage. I hate admitting that at 38, but I hate what happens without it more. I have been clean from gambling for 19 months. I don't say cured. I don't trust that word. Some days I still get the urge, usually when I'm stressed or ashamed. My brain still whispers that one win could speed everything up. One win could pay Laura back faster. One win could prove I'm not a failure. But I know that voice now. That voice took my wife's grief money. That voice took my daughter's birthday cash. That voice made me lie until the truth had nowhere left to hide. A few weeks ago, Emily asked me why I don't live with her and Mum anymore. I had practiced answers in therapy. Age-appropriate ones. Honest, but not too heavy. I told her, I made choices that hurt Mum and made our home unsafe emotionally. I'm getting help so I don't make those choices again. She looked at me for a long time and said, "Did you say sorry?" I said, "Yes, but sorry doesn't fix everything." She nodded like she understood more than I wanted her to. Then she asked if we could get chips. So we got chips. That's my life now. Not redemption, not forgiveness wrapped in a bow. Just small moments I try not to ruin. I'm writing this because if you're at the beginning, you probably still think you can control it. You probably think your situation is different. You probably think you're one good weekend away from fixing the damage. I thought that too. By the time I admitted I had a problem, I didn't just have a problem. I had wreckage. And the worst thing I ever lost wasn't money. It was the version of me my family used to trust.